Welcome to the Coaching Collective podcast. So today we are graced with the presence of a little bit famous around Melbourne, but Jaxon Guerin. So you're season A Classic Physique Pro. Training currently at Doherty's. You're also still at Emerge, or
Yeah, I'm still there a bit as well. I'm also
yeah,
at Powerhouse. I'm a bit of a nomad right now where I
yeah,
train. So I train everywhere.
yeah. No, awesome, man. So without further ado, man, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll go from there.
How you going, everyone? My name is Jaxon Guerin. I'm 25 years old. Yeah, I'm getting old now. Quarter life crisis.
Getting old, yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm a IFBB Classic Physique Pro competitor. I compete in season A, of course, as James said. Yep. And pretty much,
Michael,
sorry,
Michael.
my bad.
We sound,
I
we
haven't
sound
had a
the
meal in 3 hours.
same. Sound the
Yeah.
same.
As the boys
Easy
said,
mistake.
yep.
Not the first time.
Competed in
Yeah.
season A, so that was an amazing experience. And yeah, it's an honor to be here and to have a good chat with you lads and get some good like dialogue going. I'm really keen. Blessed to be
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Thanks for jumping on with us, bro. We appreciate it a lot.
Anytime.
Yeah, we had your name written down for a little while, and we're like, yeah, we probably should reach out to him now. Because I think we had you written down to ask, but it would have been in your prep.
Okay, yep.
And we're like, yeah, we're not going to do that because
Maybe leave him alone.
yeah, because I think it was the same with Taylor. We asked, Taylor Madison, and
Yeah, yeah.
we're like, oh, we can't ask her, folks. She's 5 weeks out. You know what I mean?
I think, look, everyone is different. Like,
Mm.
personally, for me, I was completely fine with doing stuff like that. Like, even like the whole weeks of peak week leading up, I'd literally like go to friends' houses. Like, even when I was like 4 days out, 3 days out, 2 days out was a bit different. But like, I'm a very like, not flamboyant, but I'm like an introvert extrovert. So like, I'm a little bit quiet sometimes. When you get to really know me, I really love to be around people. And yeah, so I guess everyone's just different, but yeah.
Yeah, no, cool, man. So, give us a little bit about your backstory, man. So, when did you start training? When did you decide that you wanted to have a competitive stint? Because obviously we spoke about it a little bit before the recording, but yeah, just jump into that and we'll
Yeah,
sort
for
of.
sure. Well, look, honestly, like, to not go into crazy detail about it, but basically, like, I started training a lot when I was a kid, and I love just being generally in sport. But originally, my first ever sport that I actually did wasn't really sport; it was actually dancing. I
Okay.
did ballet for about 6 years,
Mhm.
so that was something I wanted to pursue when I was older and become a professional ballet dancer in like, the National Australian Ballet. So I actually tried out for that when I was a bit younger. I was a little bit unsuccessful though in reaching that at the time. I was just a bit too young. Then from that, pretty much like, yeah, I moved between a lot of sports like football, even played a bit of soccer here and there, a lot of basketball as well, a lot of athletics. I loved athletics. And then sort of from, after playing football for about, 4 to 5 years and, going through the whole system of like, the TAC with, like that drafting process, I sort of lost my love a little bit for, for footy. And I sort of said like, well, I've always loved American football. So it's like, well, I want to do something like that. And, I was a big Patriots fan back in like, the 2010s. And like, I always loved Gronkowski, tight end. And he's always such a big guy. And I was looking at sort of like his, like, sort of like training regimes on YouTube. And like, he'd hit the weights and hit the gym like 4 times a week, which I never really did. I was sort of like a skinnier guy. I used to run a lot. I was sort of built like a noodle, So I
Yeah.
was a pretty skinny kid, and from that, like I sort of wanted to get into the gym, and at the time, I was very blessed. My dad had like a full kitted out, like home gym. It was like valued at least close to 30, 40 grand, and we had dumbbells up to 50 kilos. We had like a hack squat, leg press. We had like cable machines, bench press, and thanks to him, I was able to get into the gym sort of at home and just sort of train there pretty much. And within the span of like 4 months of starting, I went from, about 75 kilos, like 100 kilos in a couple of months. So I
Really?
just did like a,
Hmm.
yeah, just ate a lot of food. And, from that, I was sort of wanting to move into, again, just like bulking up for wanting to play like varsity in America because I really wanted to do something like that.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, my mum actually bought me a muscular development magazine of Arnold Schwarzenegger. And from
Very
there,
cool.
I think you
Yeah.
could sort of probably see what I
Yeah.
wanted to do
Mhm.
from there. So yeah, pretty much that's, my entire 20 years of my life up until now, it's, yeah, we've been a very sporty family. My father also competed in the 1992 Winter Olympics. So he was
Cool.
the fastest speed skier in Australia. And, from him as well, like I was able to learn a lot about, like training and, he's never forced me to train. I've always actually wanted to train. And, he also taught me a lot in the gym on like how to hit, like how to squat, how to bench press, how to deadlift. And, within those months of training as well, when I put on like 25, 30 kilos, I actually put on a lot of strength in the gym. I went from, like a 20 kilo bench press to like a 120 kilo bench press in like 3 months. And end of that year at 17, I was benching 140. I
17
squatted.
and 140. Jesus.
um, and then like, even ended within 3 months, I went from like a 60 kilo deadlift to like a 205 kilo deadlift. Shit form, of course, being 16.
Yeah.
So yeah, then pretty much from there, like that year, I said, you know what, fuck it, let's compete. And Gus, we're on here, or we're good.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, so it's making sure.
Very much
No, that's good.
Parental friendly. And pretty much like, that year in September when I was in high school in year 11, I did my first INBA show. So ICN was,
So
I think
you
it was
have
still around, but
competed prior to this. I didn't know that.
yeah.
I thought this was the first season. Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I did that for my first time and I won the men's teenage, and then I also did the first timers. I came third against two other guys. I was like dick skin peeled out of their mind, like, over 15 years older than me. And then I did the opens and I came top 5 in like a state show. So that was pretty cool. And then I did another ICN show 6 months after that. And I placed second in that men's teenage. I just wasn't lean enough. Just need to get bigger and get leaner. Yeah, and I did the opens as well. I came top 10 in that. And I think, yeah, that was it. I decided to have a bit of a break from there. And then the following year, obviously, high school and BCE and year 12 and all that shit. And then went straight into powerlifting the following year when I was out of year 12. So that was really fun. I got very, very, very strong from that, especially, like being natural at the time. It was great to really sort of develop like a good foundation with your physique. So I think honestly, like with that, it was just great, So yeah, then pretty much from here, decided to try and prep for the first time after COVID, and that didn't work out due to some health issues I encountered. And then the following year, I, tore a muscle, which at that time as well, I was incredibly stressed out. I just couldn't handle it as a person. Just wasn't old enough, in my opinion. And yeah, and then start of last year, that was my third prep in a row. And that didn't work out for me as well. A lot of things occurred, like my dog died, and I just got incredibly stressed out again and sort of couldn't get that groove, And yeah, then after that, I realized I needed a good off season. And yeah, here we are. I did my first show and, won the overall, and then we won the pro card. So yeah, back to another off season.
Yeah, awesome, man. So you actually competed at 17 in the INBA and ICN.
I just turned 17. I was like a month into being 17. Yeah,
You've been the youngest one there.
for sure. Yeah.
You see a couple of 17, you see a couple of the really young guys, but you can generally pick them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because it is invasive for someone who's in school. And you also mentioned TAC. So were you trying to get drafted? Was that AFL?
Yeah, for sure. So I was in the Oakley Chargers for that, and my brother was as well at the time. And when he was out of school, he was playing for VFL for Carlton, I think. But yeah, at the time, like I was very, very big football fanatic. I loved playing footy. It was so fun. And through that, I developed a lot of like cardiovascular fitness. Like I got super fit, and I got to the point where, I decided to start basically after I left footy. I had about a 4-month period before I picked up weights. And throughout that period, I was just like basically doing like sprinting and a lot of like track athletics. And I really, really enjoyed that as well. But yeah, I always wanted to just like sort of play like a contact sport and just through people, And,
Yeah.
especially American football, you pad it up. You're basically doing the same impact of what guys do in AFL, except you're just like completely protected. And it just seemed really enjoyable and loving the whole sporting system over there. It seemed cool. Yeah.
Yeah, no, because we're big football for AFL fans.
Who you guys support? What team?
Don't talk about it.
Yeah.
We go for Essendon.
Yeah.
Oh, not too bad. I thought you were gonna say like Carlton or something. Like
that'll be improvement right now. Yeah.
Oh, I should be annoyed. All right, I'm saying Kilda, unfortunately, due to family reasons. So we got it worse.
Yeah. I did beat us, so it's not too bad.
Yeah.
Well, no, I was very disappointed on the weekend, but you know what? At the same time, at the end of the game, it's like I'm used to this. It's been 20.
It's like what else do I expect?
Yeah. I've been on Essendon since I was like 5, and I'm not saying like 5 years old and I just supported them. At 5 years old, I used to watch every game.
Yeah.
I was like diehard. Yeah, but no, cool. Because even seeing 75 kilos to 100 kilograms, Jesus Christ. Because I remember seeing you when you were 23, and it's like this guy's a freak. And people often ask like they'll ask about you, especially when I get inquiries, especially after you won everything last season. And hearing stories like this makes you recognize that while genetics are a factor, you've been doing this a lot longer than what most people probably are led to believe. Like you competed at 16, like that's crazy. Yeah, you were bench pressing like religiously at 17. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure, man. I just ate a ton of food. Like, not gonna lie, like that when I put on like nearly 25, 30 kilos, that was just like eat everything in sight. And I think honestly, like I actually was appreciative of it. Only problem was my body fat got so high, but I got so strong. Like, and I really think as well, like, you know, being younger and sort of just like looking, there was even back then, like 8 years ago, 9 years ago, there was like such a lack of information compared to now.
Yeah.
And, you know, like it just, like if I could go back and, you know, be 17 years old and I would just start researching like a madman. Even back then, I was trying to literally like, I would literally go back into like those Wayback Machines online and try to go back to old forums and get like old, you know, training splits from Arnold or like all these old school guys like Bertil Fox or like, you know, Franco or even like Rich Gaspari, Lee Labrada, like all these guys, like I would just freaking copy them to the T. And you know, and I think it really did actually help build my physique a lot until, you know, until I hit powerlifting as well, which is great because you see a lot of high level like bodybuilders, they really stem from powerlifting, like Ronnie Coleman, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jay Cutler, even like C-Bum, he did, you know, like squats and deadlifts for a brief period of time. And so I think again, like there's no right or wrong with this whole approach in the sport, but it's more about like what can you do to maximize your progress for a long, consistent period of time, I think. So yeah.
It's interesting you say that because I actually put up a reel yesterday regarding just the sheer time it takes to see the results that you want. And I'm sure you observe this too. I'm not too sure how many up and coming enhanced bodybuilders you deal with, but they do think that they can still create that shortcut through leveraging PEDs. But then you recognize that that's not the case because the guys who do really well, in my experience, are guys who, such as yourself, have been applying for extended periods of time in a more structured, it sounds like a more structured manner. Because even if you're doing powerlifting, you still would have a big focus on progressive overload and structure around your sessions. And whereas someone else who's potentially 19, 20 is probably going in and just trying to thrush the muscle till it's dead. You know what I mean?
Definitely. I agree. Like I think, you know, even back then I had a powerlifting coach and my first ever meet, you know, I was 20, I just turned 20 years old and I totaled 770 at a meet. So it wasn't too bad. And then like within a year later of like, you know, really pushing things to the next level and going to that next level in bodybuilding, like at like 21, just turned 22. Like I remember I benched like 220. Well, I think like 75% of the way up. And then like, you know, when it came to squats, like I've squatted easy 260 for sets of like, you know, 6 to 7, like, you know, completely straight out of like a diet phase. And, you know, so I think like when it comes to like, you know, being younger and you're basically, you know, that saying of like being made of rubber and magic. It's so funny because it's so true. You can just train so hard and so consistently and just recover like insane. And I think, you know, going back to, you know, a lot of younger individuals listening to this podcast, like I think it's very important to just make sure that you can do stuff that will, you know, if you're asking yourself, can I train like this in 10 years? If the answer is no, why are you sort of doing it now? You know, like in my honest opinion, because I think it's very big on like longevity because a lot of people don't give a shit about their health until it's in the bin or, you know, people don't care about having all this money until they're broke. So, you know, I think it's, you know, having that commodity of health and wealth is very, very overlooked in this day and age. And I think especially for younger guys, it's like, oh, whatever, you know, I'll recover from that next week. It's like, well, you can't really do that in 10 years, man. Like even now at 25, it's like, I'm very meticulous with the type of training I want because if I injure myself, that's like a 4-5 month setback, maybe, you know? So you still,
Absolutely.
Yeah, because even now, like obviously I'm that little bit older than you, but so I'm 29. I've probably only noticed in the last 2 years that the injuries do become like not like more because I still get injured when I was like 23 to 26. But they were a lot more recoverable than they are now, or it was to a point where I could work through them. Now, like even because I was training for Classic and it was always more for a participation, I decided to switch to men's physique. But one of the reasons I decided to do that was because I reached a point where I realized that with my knees, it sounds like a weak excuse because everyone complains about their knees. But I was getting arthritis in my knees to a point where I'd get 8 weeks into a block and I could hardly sit down for more than 20 minutes.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Yeah. While I was overseas at one point, for example, I had to get the cab driver to pull over every 30 minutes. Like,
Wow.
and when I was like, I've made a good decision because it
For
would always
sure.
be straight up. Yeah. So, and yeah, people don't realize that. Yeah. When you're 25, you do get away with things like that. You will get away with doing 10 sets of a squat pattern or when you're 20, but when you're 30, that just
No,
doesn't
for sure
apply
not.
anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's why it's so important, just like having good coaching, because I think a lot of the time it's like, hey, he's like 5 sets of 10 or like even more than 3 sets. It's, in my opinion, a little bit mundane as well. And it
That's
doesn't, and I think the context of
yeah.
just, the whole sledgehammer with a nail, like it makes
Yeah.
no sense. It's like, yes, it works, but is it as effective as being a bit more fine-tuned with your training and programming? Like that's the thing. So, luckily for me, like, my work is, very conducive towards a bodybuilding lifestyle because it's pretty sedentary to the point where it's not really hard on my body. It's not like I'm a concreter like my friend Aman, like he's a concreter full time and like, well, sorry, bricklayer, my bad, bricklayer, and he's like working his ass off. It's like one of the hardest physical jobs you can get aside from digging holes all day. So, I think that's why, it comes down to, again, like exercise selection, training intensity, volume, tonnage, recovery modalities, like training splits, nutrition. Like there's so many factors involved. But I think when you're young, you can maximize that really well and create a great foundation with your physique, which, thanks to, doing powerlifting back in the day, it just really helps set that foundation for, who I am today. Yeah.
Of course. I wanted to loop back. I wrote down here a milk story. I'll never forget. You said how there was no information available back in the day. So when I started training, I would have been 17, so 12 years ago. And you'd rely on that old school bro bodybuilder in the gym.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was saying to him, man, I'm like 81 kilos, whatever it was. I can't put on weight. And he's like, you gotta have a liter of milk with all your meals. And I remember looking at him thinking, yeah, I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, man. And I remember I'd do a liter with two of my meals. He used to kill me. And it would have been 3 weeks later. I would have been like 85 kilos. And
Wow.
I just looked disgusting. You got to think full cream milk. That would have been like an extra a liter. That would have been an extra 2,000 calories a day.
Oh,
For
man.
sure, man.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo.
I remember I'd eat my meal. I'd be sitting there trying to drink it. Like, I'd sit at the bench. I'd drink. I'd be like, fuck. But that's the kind of stuff that we were exposed to. Now you have all this information available and people will still reject it for like that bro's feedback.
For sure, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
I think as well, like, you know, it's great to look at the research and also like empirical evidence of like supporting, why something works and why something might not be as favorable for you.
Mhm.
But also too, in this sport, there are some methods that also haven't been researched effectively to the point where they have been shown to work, but why? And I think that's why as well, in this current day and age, it's like, well, if the facts aren't 100%, it doesn't work. Like
Mhm.
it's a bit of a double-edged sword because yes, that makes sense, but at the same time, you're dilapidating your argument because also one, science changes like over each decade, more studies get released. Meta-analyses can take up to, 20, 30 years, even sometimes worth of studies. And I think that's why, like, looking at sort of like from the outside in rather than being like someone who would maybe like, let's say, research, studies themselves, like I think it's very easy to say, well, this method works, this one doesn't. It's like, yes, but also at the same time as well, like if you haven't also tried those different methods, how would you know if they don't work for you too? But of course there's, fundamentals with everything. Like for example, you should have at least anywhere from, like 2 to 5 overall working sets, per muscle group on a session, let's say twice a week, so then also too, you can split that up and try to drive intensity more. But I think as well, like when it comes to, like junk volume, of course, it's going to work only to an extent. Of course, it's not favorable and you're probably going to destroy your body from doing that. But, I think this is why it's very important for a lot of people with information. It's like, yeah, everyone can just reject it straight away because if it also doesn't suit them or, if they don't have any specific meta-analyses studied, back to it, it's like, oh, that doesn't make sense. It's like, well, yeah, but at the same time as well, like, if you're young too, like I remember trying so many different methods, like when it came to my nutrition, my training, so I think it's also too, like you need to sometimes also find what works best for you, whether it's psychologically and physically or both, so yeah, very, very important stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I've always been a big believer as well. And, like similar to what you've said as well, you've probably just gone a little bit deeper than I would typically to I guess,
Mm,
normal person. But
mm.
I think there needs to be a good balance of research versus anecdote.
Yep.
Yeah.
Especially with like the sheer number of competitors I had last season. Some things that I would get a few of them to do, you would theoretically think, why the fuck would you do that? And in some cases, you would do that, and it would probably make things worse. But there was a couple of guys or girls, trying to think of specific examples where, yeah, like for example, very against diuretics is like a way that's sort of gone from the research route right now. But I had one specific client who needed them, and he didn't need them. I really didn't want to take the risk, but he was adamant he needed to take the risk. And on show day, I actually said to him the night before, "You're not taking it." And he said, "Okay." And then on show day, I'm like, "He came up perfect. I told you not to do it." And he's like, "Oh, bro, I took it." And I thought, "Oh, okay." But yeah, until you really, yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
It is.
I think until you've got the experience, whether it be within yourself or within people that you've worked with, it becomes hard to work out. But yeah, no, awesome, man. So run us through the pro card. Did you think you were going to win the pro card, or where was your head? You can be honest.
Honestly, okay. So leading up to the VIX, I was ready to just do the VIX and I was done. Like I was completely done with bodybuilding. I'm like, I'm finished. I just wanted to get on stage. I wanted to do something that I would set out a goal and just get back to normal life and be me and just enjoy, my time with my fiance. And then, when it came up to the show day, I woke up that morning and I was just like, I'm just grateful to be here. And I didn't really think about looking at the overall even or winning. I said, look, realistically, if I can get top 3 in any division, I'm happy. So, what do you know? Backstage, of course, after, for the VIX, there was, a lot of hype and, I won 8 divisions that day. So that was great. But when it came down to after the VIX, I got a little bit overwhelmed. I called my missus like the night after, so Sunday night on the phone. I was just incredibly overwhelmed by all the stuff that happened. And I was sort of like, I don't like feeling like this. It feels weird. And, I just don't want to do it anymore. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I don't want to think about like a pro card. I don't want to think about winning. I just want to do it because I love doing it. Like, I just want to genuinely just do bodybuilding because I like it. And she was like, look, like there's either two choices you can make. You can either, get up tomorrow morning and just, start your reverse phase from there. Or, if you get up and you want to do the cardio, you want to train, you want to get your output in and, have your meals, like I think you should do the nationals. She was really egging me on to do it. So, I just didn't want to get caught up in that whole winning aspect because it's such a facade. Like it's not real. And I think, in expanding upon that, it's more based on setting yourself up for failure. I think setting yourself up for failure is like, trying to say, oh, I want to reach this goal. I want to do this, especially in a subjective sport.
Yeah.
That is almost like the percentage of that occurring is like less than 5%. So, going through that leading up to the show, I literally, I muted over 350 accounts I follow. I muted everyone I knew was competing. I muted every single bodybuilding page. I muted every single, like thing associated with bodybuilding. So when I scrolled on Instagram, it just wasn't bodybuilding anymore. So I could just stick to what I was doing, my prep. And, leading up for that week, all I said was, look, I just want to improve upon the previous self. And that's it. Like, if we can do that, I'm happy. So leading up to the peak week, I had a great week with my friends. I just go have some shisha every night with some friends. I don't really smoke. I'm asthmatic. It was just good to get out of the house and, hang out with friends a lot. And then, I think the morning I woke up for the pro card, look, leading up those last 4 days, I had this like build up of momentum and energy and just like relief. Like I've made it again. And, I think if I come improved, I can do really well. I knew I'd be a top contender considering I won the VIX. So that was all I wanted. And yeah, then when we came in, we just won the like the true novice and then the novice and then the open. Whew, that was excuse me. That was very there was a lot going on for that. I wasn't allowed to pump up for the first 2 divisions, and yeah, then for the opens, I was like allowed to pump up, and then I'm filling up like everything backstage, and everyone's sort of looking like, oh, what the heck, like and it was great, but it was a good experience, and I think once I won the open, I knew that I won my pro card. Just because I know that, like, yeah, again, you know, like Cam and Jordan look so good, and I knew that like it'd be very close against them.
Mhm.
And yeah, once we hit the overall, I just stood on there and had fun, and just whatever happened, you know. So yeah, I did have a bit of a feeling, but even though there's always certainty behind something, yeah, there is always that small percentile where it's like, what if it doesn't happen? How am I going to sort of take this on board? So that was like my approach going into it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure as well coming out of VIX and having one VIX. And I feel like not that you sort of came out of nowhere, but I feel like it was like everyone saw you on stage and everyone was sort of like, oh fuck, okay. Like you could be on here for nationals. And it's like he'd be silly not to do nationals, really. And I feel like obviously not in your shoes, but like that would have been a lot of pressure coming off that stage because I feel like even just through like social media, people would like posting about you or posting or messaging you and whatever. And then it's just like, yeah, it becomes a lot of pressure because then leading into those nationals, you're like, well, fuck, what if I don't win? And it's like everyone's
Yeah,
messaging
I
saying,
can
go do nationals,
understand.
go win your pro card. Like,
Sure. Like I literally remember when I stepped off stage, like after the overall, and I think actually no, I think it was after the show. It was like an hour after. I'm literally in the car getting driven back home, ready to like, you know, go to a nice steakhouse for dinner, which was unreal.
Yeah.
Some person puts up a story, literally like, oh, you know, look, I'm gonna call it now. I think Jaxon Guerin's gonna win his pro card. I'm like, oh fuck, why is this happening? Like,
oh
you know,
no.
stop. Like, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
want to hear this, you know.
Yeah.
But no, it was good. Like, it was a really fun day, and I just fuck, like honestly, being as present as possible really did help me enjoy the day. Because like when I look back on it, there was no stress. I just didn't feel like, oh my gosh, you know, rushing around to get shit done. Just had fun. My missus backstage with me. It was both those days were great. And when I was expediting the season B show a couple of weeks ago, like when they're all backstage, I'm like, guys, you fucking made it. Just enjoy the day now, have some fun on stage, and just let loose. Like, you know, because a lot of people you can tell they're stressed, and it's very easy to get that build up of emotions. It's like, oh, you know, like I got adrenaline running through me. It's probably the most disadvantageous thing before you get on stage because, you know, then you're breathing fast and you're not taking your time with your posing and you're starting to rush poses and you look like you're starting to shake even. So I think it's just very important, like on the premise of just enjoying what you do. And regardless of, you know, whether, you know, you're trying to get a pro card or win just like a division or even try to fucking qualify for an Olympia or try to win one, I think adopting that same mindset will keep you in this sport for a very long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Just I think with your case, just jumping back a topic, with your case, it was quite a clear standout from an outside in perspective that you were probably going to win for the season. But I did see cases where, like touching on what you've said about letting yourself down to an extent, I saw cases where there were other competitors who placed really well at their state shows, and then they'd post about it quite regular. I can't think of the right word. And then they actually got to the nationals, and I saw a couple not even place top five.
I think as well because complacency is, you know, usually your biggest enemy in this sport. And I think that's why, like, you know, of course, appreciating where you are in the process and where you're going and also what you've done, but not allowing that to consume you. Like, for example, it's like I'm not the reason of being a pro. Like, for example, it's like I'm just training now. I'm trying to improve my previous physique, and that's all I can do, you know, is like improve upon from what I was 2 months ago, 3 months ago, even 12 months ago, you know. So I think as well, like when it comes to prep, it's like, you know, I'll explain the story after. It's like, you know, when I was 2 weeks out, I had to lose 8 kilos to make weight for the VIX, you know, and I saw 4 weeks out, guys with peeled glutes and shredded, you know, and I'm like, fuck, like this is cooked. Like, how am I not even shape? And it was killing me. It was pissing me off. I was getting so annoyed about it, and it was really getting to me. I didn't really want it to, and you know, I was at the point where like, what the fuck? And you know, those same people on stage, like they look great, but you know, they just didn't hit that mark. They looked better 4 weeks before than the day of the show. So I just didn't really put that together. I think a lot of it comes down to timing. You know, that timing is so crucial, man. Like I think as well, it's like it's great to get guys lean before a show, but also if it's too long, man, that risk of losing muscle tissue is very, very high, you know. So I'm not sure if I haven't really seen any sort of like studies based on it on like muscle retention in like a diet phase, but you know, it seems like, you know, having that low energy availability, like Dr. Eric Helms talking about this and you know, having that when you're shredded, you have low energy availability, which means like you have a lack of like energy substrates in your body that you can utilize. So it's like already that's a higher risk of losing muscle tissue. So that could be the case, or just like a mix of peaking and stress, like so many variables, man, which makes the sport really tricky, but also very fun. So yeah.
It is
No,
a bit of a, I
yeah,
was
one
going to
of the,
say,
no,
yeah,
yeah,
I was
no.
going to say, I also think when you're ready relatively early too, it can become a bit of an issue to fill you out. And that's where
Yeah.
it becomes a bit of a, like,
I
yeah,
notice it
becomes
here
like a
with
mental
when they're
shock.
ready early.
For sure. Like, have
Yeah,
you ever been lean early and it affects you psychologically or
I've
more
seen,
physically?
I've seen it in clients psychologically
Mm.
because I believe is because their body's under such an immense amount of stress. For example, you said you felt a bit off between like VIX and nationals.
Mm,
You dragged out that feeling for 6, 7 weeks. By like week 5, you probably would have started going off your head a little bit.
for
Do you know
sure.
what I mean? Yeah. And I think that plays a big part in it. Plus, it depends on the coach too. Because, for example, like just going a little bit more in detail, I know coaches that will push things like T3 towards the end and like they'll move it up. And if they're already in like a restricted environment
For
and
sure.
they're trying to get a little bit more out of the athlete, then you will start to observe
Mm.
potential tissue loss. Like I like to think if you're ready early, you'd rather just put the brakes on and then.
Mm.
But then again,
Yeah.
it's one of those things. I'm sure you were the same. It's hard to really know until you put yourself up against someone else or you're in the gym seeing yourself against someone else. It's hard to really tell sometimes how
Yeah,
far off the mark you are, especially if you've got
definitely.
the wrong people in your corner, because obviously everyone's going to say, fuck, you look awesome. And then it's like, well, not compared to how I need to look. But
Mm.
sometimes
Yeah,
be there and you might still think you got room to go. It's a tough one. That's
it
experience.
definitely is.
It's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's the thing. Yeah, it's like again pushing more out of an athlete towards the end. Like that was with me. Like
Mm.
I had to push the furthest, like the hardest I could, from the VIX to the nationals, and then all of a sudden, like I got to like 3 weeks in between the shows. Yeah, it was about three
Yeah,
weeks.
3 weeks, yeah.
The first week, I felt fine because obviously, like you still have that big high adrenaline, big free meal and buckload of food that night, and then that sort of drags you and takes you through the week, and then by I got to about 9 days out, 10 days out, even 11, and my sleep was in the bin. Like, and when my sleep's in the bin, that's how you know I'm at the like I pushed myself to the absolute limit because my sleep is the last thing to go, which is
Mm.
great actually. So, but when it came to that, I started to get like anxiety before I went to bed. I'm like,
Mm.
I would literally have like a semi-panic attack
Mhm.
thinking about going to
To
sleep,
sleep.
which is incredibly strange, man. Like, looking back and it's like, what the fuck was I
Yeah.
thinking? But you're so stimmed out. You've got, like you're taking cutters and, like your diet, like calories are so low. I was on like 80, 90 grams of carbs every day with like an hour and 20 minutes cardio. I was killing myself. Like I
Mm.
was really pushing it hard, but I knew that had to be what it took. And yeah, then it got to the point where I had like a massive refeed the following day. And then I woke up, had the first meal on the way to get my tissue work in the car, and I'm like asleep like 30 minutes. You're like,
Like a
oh,
lot.
down. It was good. So yeah, it's very, very interesting. Like everyone's so different. I honestly look at like being a coach, you're somewhat of like like an understudied psychologist, I like to call it, because you really have to understand the psychology and the psyche of an athlete or a client or an individual.
Yeah.
So yeah, very interesting.
No, it's funny you say that about the sleep because I remember my first prep, I'd get so anxious to go to sleep. It would have been 3 weeks out. I'd be like, am I going to sleep tonight? And then I'd try to do everything right to get ready for sleep. And then I'd lay down and I'd just be sitting there like, fuck, it's happened again.
Yeah.
And then I would fall asleep. And I'm sure you got this as well. You know, when you go into the toilet a lot towards the end, I'd fall asleep, and then an hour later, I'd wake up busting to pee, and I'd be like, "Oh, this can't." Yeah, you
Yeah,
get
yeah,
up, you go back down to be another hour.
for
Uh,
sure.
that was probably my least. That's my least favorite part. My
Yeah.
last prep, I didn't have that problem, but I think it's because I was so much more active throughout the day. At the night, it was just like I
Mm.
was
Oh, it's
done.
Yeah,
getting in
exactly.
bed.
That's what
Yeah.
I was trying to do. I was trying to make
Yeah.
sure I got up early.
Mm,
And when I went to sleep, like,
mm,
I didn't really have a good sleep system. Like,
yep.
so I started watching, like, listening to those Dr. Huberman, that like sleep study, like 7-part not documentary, like podcast, and that was really helpful. So, sort of just like having like orange, like a low light, like no blue light in your face, read a book, just hang out with the missus until I'm tired to go to sleep. I was like,
Mm.
I also said to myself, like, if I can't sleep tonight, I'll be tired tomorrow, so I can just nap. So once I realized that, I was like, oh, I'm fine. So, but I think, look, like, getting to that point where sleep is going to be affected, like using natural interventions helps a lot. So yeah.
Yeah, the one that I like the most, I like the 5-HTP and the microdose of melatonin. I'm not sure what you've used.
Yep. Yeah.
Or have you bigger on the blends and stuff?
Yeah, I was more on the blends. Like I was just
Mm.
on like just taking like this Dream by Axe Labs. They were really
I
good.
knew you were gonna say
Yeah.
that.
Just because
Yeah.
like like
Yeah.
I would not have an issue with staying asleep, but getting asleep. So for me, it was like I just need something that will help like just sort of fast track that onset for sleep, and then I'm fine.
Yeah. Nah, because I got a little bit of a sleep stack that I use, and yeah, it has helped a lot. Damn, there was a question I was going to ask on that, but I have gone completely blank on it.
No,
So,
you're fine.
what's the ambition from here?
Honestly, man, we are looking competing next year. So I'm just getting married next year in June. So that's going to be an amazing time. So I'm getting married in Italy next year with the missus. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
sick.
nice.
Yeah, good man.
Yeah. So you can see why, like that's a priority for me right now. And, just like having a family with her, like, I eventually want to, I want to be a husband. I eventually also want to be a father in a couple of years and
Mhm.
something that I really want to do. So I think honestly, when it comes to that, like, just sort of working around that. And also too, like, with right now with Dean, it's more just based on like, what's the rate of progression. So if I'm progressing at a very, very good rate, I'll definitely look at competing a bit earlier. But also too, it's like if I'm at a point where like I do have that mature decision to say, well, look, I can compete early next year, but if I'm not in the best sort of physical like state to do that, I won't. So
Yeah.
I think when it comes to regardless of next year, it's just more of a matter of like if it's before or after the wedding. So honestly, like I would like to I would like to take my time with it. But at the same time too, like I really would love to be in that pro circuit. Like it's so much fun. It looks awesome. So but yeah, but also too, like this is a marathon, not a sprint, where a lot of people misconstrued that information where it's like, oh, the faster I go, the harder I go, the more progress I make. It's like, well, yes, for a brief period of time, but on the back end of that, you're going to get so many issues physiologically, psychologically, and health wise. So I think that's why it's like just taking your time with this. And, I'm very, very happy with where I am and my current physique and how I'm progressing, the strongest I've probably ever been volume wise ever in my life. And also too, being 125.5 kilos in the morning, I'm still got, like good abs, like, ab definition. I got slightly a bit of like, glute definition coming in still. So I'm really happy with how it's all going. Just trying to enjoy that process, So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the good thing about I think the middle of the year, the pro shows are predominantly in Europe. So that's
For
probably
sure.
the most exciting part. But because I was going to suggest something to you, but then mid-June, it's like, oh, that's about when it is.
Yeah, well, I was even
Something
looking at like
we don't
that
want
Dubai Pro, like that looks good because
Oh
it's like
yeah, we
thousand
want
investment.
we actually booked to go to that, but we shrunk the trip down just because it dragged out a little bit too far.
For
Uh,
sure. Yeah.
I heard it was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and like for
It looked
bodybuilding,
really cool.
it's like another planet.
Yeah, I saw Breon when he applied for him, like, yeah, he's won. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think honestly, if you're a top 3, top 5 Olympian, whatever pro show you do, man, you're gonna win it. Like,
Yeah.
unless it's Arnold. So yeah, very
Yeah.
interesting.
well, it's funny because until recently, I wasn't aware of how many people actually qualify for the Olympian Classic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
because when James sort of was running me through it, I'm just like, I had no idea it was that excessive. Because
Yeah.
I did notice there were a few shows where, like, the reason it raises because I was like, yeah, he's qualified for the Olympia, and I'd show James the physique, and James is like, I don't think you recognize how many people actually.
yeah,
So I guess your goal would be, I'm guessing your goal is to get there.
for sure. Yeah, like I definitely would love to,
Yeah.
just qualify for the Olympia and just step
Have
on stage and do what I
experience.
love. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you definitely have the potential shape wise and well, realistically, commitment wise as well. You spent so much of the last 3-4 years like in preps that
Hmm.
a bit of time
Yeah,
off
for
would
sure.
be
Well, it's great
This
to
sufficient.
is
have like almost,
Yeah.
sorry, it's almost great to have like nearly a full year of just growing. Like it's,
yeah.
because when I think about it, I've never been an off season for more than 6 months. So
Yeah. Well, that's what I gathered when I was sort of patching the dates together when you were running us through the
yeah,
prep. What's your
yeah,
weight cap on the pro circuit?
yeah. So on the pro circuit, it's 112.5. On the day of nationals, I was 106, but that was also like water
Oh, okay.
depleted as
Yeah.
well. Yeah,
Yes, that's a massive difference. You should be fine.
a
Yeah,
lot.
that's
So
gonna
just
sound like 13 kilos from here.
yeah. So
Yeah.
pretty much it's good being only like 12, 13 kilos up because like last year when I got to like 130 kilos, it's like, you got to lose nearly 20 kilos to make weight. It's just
Yeah.
like, how long can I keep doing this for? It's like, I just fucking just go open bodybuilding. You know,
Yes,
like,
that was going to
and
be
even then it's
that was going to be my question. Are you ever going to make the move to open?
if my muscle rate was like my muscle growth rate was really good, 100%. Just it's going to be a very standard like answer, but you know, like I just want to be able to like run around with my children when I'm older. Like, you know, I want to be able to wipe my ass and like
Yeah,
I really love being like, for example, like this current shape I'm in my off season. This is like actually probably when I'm like the most confident in how I am as a person, like just objectively looking at my physique. So, you know, because I think when it comes to an off season, like if you do it right, you know, for me, I'm really happy with my shape. I still got a fairly small waist. My shoulders are like doubled in width, and you know, my quads are bigger. So honestly, like I'm really happy with how I am. And you know, but look, I love open bodybuilding. Like I actually had so much fun when I did the Victorian State show. So when I won the first timers, the novice, and also the super heavies. So I was the best super heavyweight bodybuilder in Victoria. That was great. So it was just really, really fun. And I actually love doing more of the poses. Like it really puts you through the ringer, but it was just so fun. Like
yeah,
just wearing trunks and like seeing your glutes all peeled. And it feels like for me, I love doing that as well because I really feel like I earned the respect of a lot of my peers. Not just because I did classic as like a shortcut, because a lot of people do classic as well because they're just not big enough for bodybuilding, which I think is it's not the great way to go about it.
yeah.
But yeah, when it comes to bodybuilding, like opens, it was just great, you know, and I really so much fun. So look, maybe one day, but you know, like I feel like with my roots of ballet as well, and just how I love the art behind classic physique, I think my heart is there for now.
Yeah,
But I would love to do opens. Like it's just no restrictions, just massive, more size.
yeah.
It'd be good, but yeah,
Big.
probably not the future.
Yeah.
I definitely think that you are right at home in classic.
Thank you. Yeah.
I do also think as well with bodybuilding, you probably could have pushed that for the win. You do question whether they split it because you'd won the classic overall. I
Well,
mean,
like because when I
bodybuilding,
went
you know what
and
I mean?
got my
Yeah.
yeah, because when I got my feedback, you know, look, I personally knew I didn't win because Dimitrios was a lot harder than me. So
Mhm.
I knew straight away like that was the biggest thing because like after 8 divisions, I was like fading very
Yeah.
quickly.
I noticed
So
that.
and I
Mhm.
didn't know like at the time, like, you know, I wasn't told to eat anything. So I was like, whatever, just go back on stage. And so I really don't know, but you know, I was asked the question like, you know, do you want to do classical bodybuilding for the nationals? Like, and I was like, well, I'd like to do both, but obviously I just want to focus on one. And, you know, really looking at my peers and some of the people I look up to in this industry, you know, like they really did recommend classic was more my sort of my strong point. And I'm like, well, you know what, let's do that. So, because if they said bodybuilding, I would have 100% done that. But I just think, yeah, I just love classic physique and you know, when it comes to accentuating your strong points and also looking at your weaknesses, like I think I have more weaknesses in bodybuilding rather than classic. So I sort of said, well, you know, I'll stick to classic but yeah, I would definitely love to do opens in the future. It'd be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. That's mad.
Yeah. No, yeah, I definitely, and I was going to loop back as well. I have this written down too. I've taken a few notes on you. Andy as well almost pulled out the bodybuilder pro card.
Oh, really? Did he?
Yeah, and it's same situation. It was the exact same story. His wife said, just do it. Like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? And he's like, well, I lost and like I'm not gonna win. And she was like, why would you not do it? And then
Pro card.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
And he
even
looked great. He looked unreal.
He'll be a good 212 competitor.
in Queensland,
Sure.
he looked better than Joshy as well. I thought
Yeah.
personally, that's
Yeah.
my anyone listening, that's completely
For
my
sure. Yeah.
thoughts. It's just that Josh was so much bigger.
Yeah.
He's
That it
huge, man.
becomes a hard one to
Enormous.
split. Yeah, so they had to
Yeah.
split it. I feel like they had to split it somehow. And it's
Mm,
like, oh, this guy's 100 and
Open. Yeah.
115. I don't know what he was, something ridiculous on stage.
for sure.
Yeah, because even with the Nationals, it was unanimous, the decision for Andy. Because I remember
Yeah.
James called it, and I said to James, they're not going to give it to a smaller guy. And he's
I
like,
knew
oh,
straight away. I was
yeah.
when I got home,
Mm,
um, I was eating
yeah.
fish and green beans, and then I was watching the overall for it. I'm like, that guy's won it. My dad's like, really? He's like, I'm like, yeah, watch, and he won it, and I was like, there you go. He was just the most complete guy. I
Yeah.
think that's
He
what
was
they look
very
for
complete.
at nationals. It's you know not just the potential in the future, but also how complete they are as an athlete. Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh,
Yeah, nah, he looks great.
very much like you as well. he's a good ambassador for it. Like in terms of
Definitely.
like, very humble, very nice guy, which is just nice to see because he did not expect that at all. Because I've
Mm.
DM'd him a few times. He even messaged me saying thank you for talking about him on the podcast.
Yeah, yeah.
It just shows like that's what you want. That's who you want representing the sport. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
So I
Yeah.
was so happy that he won, especially after that. Plus, he's like 43 with kids. Like,
It's
yeah,
unreal.
man. Yeah.
Holy shit.
Because he was coached by Phil Viz.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Phil actually put up a series of posts about him over the weeks. And when Phil posted all his journey to it, I was like, God damn, this guy's. But like, it's one of those cases, well, similar to yourself. He probably did secretly want to be a pro, but
Yeah.
like, it was always he just enjoyed it and he kept competing because he was enjoying it.
Mm.
And then eventually he just got the rewards of just focusing on building his physique. Do you know what I
For
mean?
sure. Yeah,
Mm.
for sure, man. And
Time.
he deserved it 100%. Like,
Yeah.
it was like a giant killer, basically. It's like a little Sean Corrider on the stage.
Yeah, it's yeah, I feel like those who do go out with like my intention is to win the pro card. It's like you need to have a pro level physique. You don't want to win by default.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then what? You win by
Well,
default, and everyone talks about how you won because it was a shit lineup,
Yeah.
and obviously it doesn't matter what others think, but like you hear that enough times, and you start to think, oh, and then you go to the pro ranks, and you're not even near it.
Yeah,
Obviously,
definitely.
it's hard to win a pro show, but like you want to be in the mix, you know?
Definitely. I think
Yeah.
it's also important to have like a pro athlete mindset where,
Yeah.
you know, like it's not about actually being a pro, but it's about embodying those values of and you know constituents of what being a pro is.
Yeah.
I think it's where a lot of people overlook that too. It's like, oh, whatever, just do the work. And it's like, it's also about how you go about it, you know? So like when people saw me every morning on the cardio, on the elliptical, on the bike, you know, I just have a smile on my face. Like, and I was like a week out and I remember Andy from, was it Andy from Doherty's? Yeah. He was like, dude, like, how are you like so happy? Like everyone's just so tired and depressed. And I'm like, I love this sport. Like I love training. Like if I didn't love it, I would not do it. Simple as that. And that's what happened those past three preps. It's like I didn't enjoy it. So it's like, why would I keep doing it? You know, it's a very common thing that a lot of people lock themselves into doing this thing where that's why I too, like I sort of like to be a bit more under the radar and just, you know, just focus on me and stop being like, hey, look, this is me. And, you know, like I just want to show people my progress though. And that's it, you know, and just try to inspire people to also better themselves on a consistent basis, you know?
I think
I
it's
haven't seen
important.
much. Oh, you go.
There you
No,
go.
you go.
No, and I was going to say, I think it's important as well when people are in the. I used to be that guy who wanted to share every little update, whether it be with me or my clients or whatever, and I was always a big advocate in that. But then now I've realized that when I do compete again, I won't share that. Like, no, like
it's your journey.
Me will know when it gets closer. I'll probably just let people know, hey, I'm doing this in a couple of months. And that would be more because I probably would get asked so much from how deathly I look that I'd have to say something.
Yeah, for sure. Then people know.
Yeah. Because
why are you looking like a bit of like a cancer survivor? No.
No, like Jude said, because Jude said to me, I said to him, you'd never, I wouldn't tell you if I was competing. And he's like, bro, you think I wouldn't see it in your face? And I'm like, oh, good point.
Yeah. And you also forget as well, like, you know, when I was like I think it was like 10 days out from the pro cut from the nationals, you know, I was at the gym and like I just had a headband on. I shaved my face again. So the stubble was gone. And I was like, someone came up to me like, dude, like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, what about you? He's like, yeah, I'm good. I'm just like, you just look like you're a bit like hungry. I'm like, well, I'm hungry, but like, yeah, I'm fine. And I'm like, fuck it. I took a selfie and then I looked back at it like a week ago. I'm like, holy shit, man. Like my face is like completely like half of what it is now.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah. No, no, like back to that, it's more like I don't think everyone needs to know every step that you take.
For sure, no.
It puts pressure on you because you see a lot of girls posting every update every week. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I don't know. For me, it's just not my thing. Like I don't like. I love seeing it. If it's someone like, I'd love to see you posting that, because it's just cool to see how people's preps are going, the ones that you're invested in. But to a wider audience, like the wider audience don't need to know.
For
like,
sure not.
That's my take anyway.
Yeah, I think privacy is a very big thing that. You know, like, you know, I have my social media page and my coaching business and all that for everyone to see, but also too, you know, like I'm very big on privacy with my fiance. You know, I don't like to say what we're doing all the time, like, you know, and I value my presence with her. And even like with family and other friends, like sometimes like you don't need to, just promote everything you're doing all the time, because when it comes to social media as well, it's like, you're leaving a big digital footprint in what you're doing. And I think too, it's like also for your overall mental well-being, I think it's great to get away from the phone, get away from technology, and also to just like go for a fucking walk outside, enjoy the sun, get some vitamin D, and walk your dog and hang out with them, and just enjoy the little things. I think a lot of people really overlook that. And I was very big on my lowest screen time was when I was competing. I would barely be on my phone. The only times I was on my phone all day was like the day after the show, just like posting stuff and getting back to people and saying thank you. And, now it's at its all-time high due to work and all that kind of stuff. And, I think that's why, again, privacy is a very big thing. It's like not always having to tell people what you're doing, unless you want their advice. So, yeah.
Agreed.
No.
Would you say your faith helped with that? Will we dive into that?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think, I was never religious. I was like a borderline atheist. Like I sort of like were to believe that there was something out there, but I was like, there's no such thing as God. He's not real and all this shit. And I'm like, well, the Holy Bible's not real. It's just a bunch of people explaining stories that happened thousands of years ago. And essentially when it came to, it was about 6 months ago. Oh, actually, no, about almost a year ago. I, it was just like at such a low point. I didn't know what I wanted out of my life, and I didn't really know who I was. And I was really attaching identity with what I was doing, which is a very bad thing, by the way. And so when it came to, finding something, I wanted to find something bigger than myself to commit to. And I think like it comes down to like your why. It's like, what's your why? And I think that's so important, because if you don't have a why in your life, it's like, how are you going to be able to, go about each day with purpose? And so for me, it was about finding spiritual purpose, which would, make me really deepen my relationship with others around me and myself. And, once I, did the Bible study course, I did that for 8 months before I got baptized. And, every single week when we'd meet on Tuesday, that would have like the daily gospel. And basically, when I read it, there was always some sort of message that, just like resolved to me so much and I could really relate to. And it was talking about like this journey with God, like this spiritual process and this journey about being along for the ride and enjoying every moment of the highs and lows. And it just came rushing all to me at once. It's like, holy fuck, like I don't know what I've been missing out of my entire life, but it's something that, has really kept me going and ensured me to be the best version of myself, and also do things that I would never thought I would be capable of, because I had such self-doubt, because it's sometimes like, I don't know if I can do it. And then when you start to have faith, it's like, well, like I can do this through God. Like he like I can do this because of him. And then once you start like believing that, like you can do some amazing things with your life. So, it really does provide a lot of willpower for people as well, and efficacy. But for me, it was about that prep. It's like, again, 2 weeks out, I was 115 kilos and I had to lose 8 kilos to make weight. Well, yeah, 7, 8, yeah, about 8 kilos.
Lost 8.
And,
Yeah.
I got baptized on Easter weekend, which was the end of March, and the show's in 2 weeks. And, after I got baptized, there was just this like release, this big emotional release of energy. It was like how it was after the VIX. And, you know, all of a sudden that next day, bang, I'm down like 1.5 kilos. And I'm like, what the fuck? And then throughout those each day, I just started dropping more and more and more weight, and nothing really changed at all in the plan. And it got to a week out and I only had to lose about 4 kilos to make weight. And going into that sauna the day before the show, sorry, no, 2 days before, when, we had to get a tan that night, I was sitting there, I'm like, you know what, like if God wills this for me, it will happen. If it doesn't, it doesn't, because he's leading me to something better. And yeah, I made the weight, and that was the first ever time in my life I reached under 110 kilos in over 3.5 years. Yeah. So, and that was for me like this massive milestone that for years I've been trying to achieve, but for the wrong reasons. And so, through finding Christ and God, it gave me much more purpose in my life. It gave me the ability to deepen my relationships more. And yeah, and it gave me a community to also talk to, you know, like when I was talking to, you know, at my church, Father Disman, he's like a cool, like Sri Lankan, you know, yeah, he's really cool. And basically, you know, I was talking to him and he was saying how, you know, like when, you know, when you doubt something in your life, that's when your faith is at its lowest. And when I sort of realized that, you know, this whole prep, I've never doubted myself. I have questioned, but I've never doubted myself. I knew that because my faith is always strong. And I think that was for me such an important thing. And it speaks to you on so many different levels. And like on a spiritual level, having, you know, that physical elation, that spiritual elation that you can look towards to, you know, and also financially with work. I think once you hit those three, you know, and also to like emotionally, relationship wise, those four pillars really do complete men. Like I think we're pretty simple creatures, you know. So I think once you hit those four different marks, it changes your life and you start to look at life with a different perspective, which is great, you know. And also too, I'm growing up and, you know, I'm 25 now. I'm not 19 anymore, so that was gone like that. But yeah, so I think it's a very important thing. It's just like having faith. Just without it, I would not even have competed, to be honest. So yeah, very
Yeah, I
important.
think the thing that which sort of stood out to me the most there is like the mentality around when you were trying to make weight. It was
Yeah.
very much just like, and like I said to you before we started the recording, like it's just more just recognizing that there is something beyond you. So any problem that you have, it's
You'll
not
find your way out.
insignificant, but it is less significant than it is played up in your head.
For sure. Yeah.
And then the other thing is like the four pillars that you mentioned as well. I think a lot of people don't recognize the necessity to solidify each and every one.
Yeah.
And people will, for example, one of the ones I hear often is like the discounting of financial stability. Obviously, that can filter down into all the three other pillars you mentioned. I'm sure there's more. And even the other one that I noticed as well is emotional, or was it emotional stability? I guess around relationship stuff.
Yep.
A lot of people fail to recognize that their situations are probably worse than they want to admit.
Yeah.
And you see that in like, even if we took that specifically, let's not take it specifically to athletes. Let's just take it in anyone who's trying to excel in any area of their life.
Sure.
If we see, for example, if you have financial instability, you're not going to be able to compete to the magnitude you want, whether that be because of this, probably just more related to the stress, and the emotional one is just going to make that process more difficult, which isn't going to see you have the outcome. Yeah, I like the mentality, man. I could go on about what you were talking about just then all day.
Yeah, it's a big rabbit hole.
Yeah, it is. We're going to wrap up there, but thank you fucking very much, bro, for coming on.
Yeah,
Anytime.
thanks,
Pleasure. But I'm going to I'll see you around plenty in the next few months because I've moved to Doherty.
I appreciate it, boys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really good.
Thank you, man.
No worries, man.
Yeah, it was good. Well, like I said, when you guys are free at Doherty's, we can do a big dirty leg day or something if you guys want. Or
please,
nice
God, don't do that to me.
Let's do upper
have some fun on the banded pendulum squats.
Oh God, that sounds like my knee would just go.
Yeah, probably.
No, I can push it. I can definitely push it. I exaggerate the issues.
Yeah.
It was partially, that was like a bit of a consolidating factor for me to switch across. The main reason to switch across was at 29, I didn't think it was reasonable to think that I could close that size gap when I've only added X amount of size in X amount of time. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Sure.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, man.